Stop constantly comparing and saying, oh, I'm better than that or I'm not as good as that. But like babies who look in mirrors and really accept and love and touch the mirror and give their reflection a kiss, there's part of that still alive in all of us to be able to find that again.
My mom's name is Agnes.
You say, hey, where are my fellow linemen? They usually go, shut up.
Perhaps then we can move on to other matters.
This is employment and training block grant services.
I just don't want to waste the money here just to say, okay, we've got to vote on this now because I've also heard the comments made, this is a moot point. We're going to build them all anyhow. Well, I guess if you say you can do it anyhow, go ahead and build it. If you don't.
Perhaps then we can move on to other matters.
This is employment and training block grant services. Any questions, Councilor? Okay.
134 is a resolution authorizing the renewal of administrative service agreement with the
Questions regarding the presentation of petitions and other communications? Reports of boards and commissions? Seeing none, then move on to our agenda into
There were about 3 or 4 bottles. No, you can't. It'll improve it in the evenings especially. I have a type of business that it's evening business. And people that go out evenings usually have a cocktail or two. And when you don't have it, they cancel their reservations and go elsewhere. If Duluth thinks that 67 licenses it's going to be sufficient, they're badly mistaken. It's a shame that Minnesota Steakhouse had to pay, that they have to wait before another one could be issued. Well, I waited 14 years.
What we have in this lab, as an example, we should use these things as boat anchors. It's disastrous.
Few of the experiences that I've had that convince me things must change so that you and the future students can get an even better education than I had.
They had a meeting on March 10th where 7 out of 9 members were there and they wouldn't take action on it.
Members of the St. Louis River Board are frustrated over proposed changes in their river plan they spent 3 years developing. The St. Louis County Attorney and Land Commissioner are suggesting the plan is too expensive and cumbersome. They have talked the county board into delaying approval.
The public is feeling pretty strongly that there's some stall tactics here to wait until maybe after the legislative session is over, or for whatever reason they're pretty frustrated.
The River Board began its work 3 years ago, hoping to regulate development to keep the federal government from stepping in and forcing regulation. The current draft would establish a zoning board that would have the power to regulate development across St. Louis, Carleton, and Lake counties. But now, just weeks before the plan is to be approved, the St. Louis County Land Commissioner says in this memo it won't work. He wants St. Louis County to keep its power over land development along the river. Part of the commissioner's objection is over fear the plan will restrict logging and other industries critical to St. Louis County's economy. This has River Board members livid.
They've had this plan since the beginning of September, pretty much in final form to go to public hearings with, and it's still not adopted as of this date.
The St. Louis County Planning Commission will meet March 31st. A public meeting and board vote is set for April 5th. Approval of the plan is critical because the legislature has to approve funding before it adjourns in May. In Duluth, Chip Wallace, News 6.
Public hearing and pass.
Concerned about our future. All we want is a peaceful demonstration, so people hear our word.
Change to see such diverse cultures. Down in Mexico, family is much more important and everything is much more oriented around family, and I just want to share that with this community here, that family is important.
I've been friends with Aisha for years, and she's different and I'm different, but we never really talked about it until Diversity Week, and it's really interesting to learn about different people.
We're all friends here, and we're all working together to get a common goal to teach everybody else. We're not trying to force them into not being racist, but we're trying to teach them to accept other people and to appreciate them. So it's more trying to teach instead of
It's our camera time.
Oh, it's okay. Each and every block, don't you? You were from where?
Mexico City. In the United States, about 4.5.
Right now is a good time for people to burn that pile of leaves, that pile of branches they may have. This is a good time for them to get that cleaned up.
As far as permits?
Permits are required in certain townships, in the neighboring Duluth townships. Hermantown, Kenosha, Lakewood require permits year-round. Other townships don't require permits when there's 3 or more inches of snow on the ground.
That the driver had worked a full 40-hour week. So they falsified the data and put down, for example, and that Carol Gerard had in fact signed the form. In other words, these trucking companies ripped off their employees, told their employees to lie, and then the companies themselves lied to the government. That's fraud, and that is a violation of federal law. That there have been no kickbacks of wages and that they have in fact paid prevailing by Mark Gerard. We found out that that was a false signature and that Carol Gerard funded by the federal government. We're telling them to lie. If there are other employees of trucking companies who've not been receiving prevailing wage and who've been told to lie, we would certainly ask them to come forward rather than having to root this out in the future.
It's not as safe as it looks. This is the most dangerous time of the year.
And this year, the Moose Lake Fire Department will be better prepared than ever. The department just purchased 2 cold water rescue suits, pricey at $400 a piece. But as firefighters will tell you, well worth it.
We do run a water and off-road rescue program, so we felt that it was necessary. If you save one life for $800, so be it. You know, you can't put a price on a life.
Some 20 Moose Lake firefighters took turns today training in the one-size-fits-all suits, braving the ice and icy water.
How cold is it? About 39.2 degrees.
How cold are you?
I'm nice and warm.
The suits are a high-tech tool for this volunteer fire department on a limited budget.
You know, a lot of the volunteer fire departments, we can't afford all that new fancy equipment, so we have to make do with what we have.
That's where a little imagination pays off for these volunteer firefighters. For about $1, a broom handle, string, and 2 nails make a life-saving tool. And for this group, whose business is saving others, the added safety equipment is a welcome addition to their team.
If we would have had an incident earlier to this, when we didn't have the suits, I don't know what we would have been able to do. Now that we have the suits and everybody's getting trained on them, if we do have an incident, there's a lot more, or there's a bigger probability of saving somebody than before.
Businesses that already are operating at a disadvantage compared to the rest of the states surrounding us. It's also going to have an impact on the employment picture for the future. Will employers have to lay off minimum wage people to accommodate this? Will they have to lower the pay of the higher wage employees to accommodate this? Will children drop out of school in order to go to work at $6.50 an hour?
You can see that the kids have had to really be museum exhibit designers, that history is something that's hands-on. And so the Minnesota Historical Society and the university sponsor History Day to help classroom teachers get kids interested in history.
The United Steelworkers Union has gone to court to keep National Steel from moving equipment away from the Keewatin plant. A state law passed in the 1993 legislative session states plants must remain operational for a full year after closing, in this case October of 1994. Union members say the removal of a large drill and several vehicles makes the plant inoperative.
That law calls for the company to keep the plant operable for 1 year, and without drills, without trucks, who knows what else they're taking out of there, we feel that the plant won't be able to operate, so they're in violation of that.
But the company disagrees. A national spokesperson says the equipment, primarily pickup trucks and Bobcat loaders, were leased by the plant. As the leases expired, the equipment was returned, and it could be replaced on short notice. The mining drill seen leaving the plant went to Eveleth Mines. It too could be returned on 30 days' notice. National is spending $16 million to keep the plant operable. Union members say they want to see the changes for themselves.
My understanding, they were cutting some piece of equipment out there from above one of the belts there, and I don't know why they'd be cutting that piece of equipment out, but maybe something else is going out. I don't know. We'd like to know, and part of the injunction is we're asking them to give us the right to go in there and check.
The courts have yet to announce if a restraining order will be issued, but for now the plant remains idled and shows no signs of reopening anytime soon. In Keewatin, Derek Hines, News 6.
Good afternoon to you from Pope Air Force Base. The death count now stands at 16. An unconfirmed report is now 18. Crash investigators from around the country are here now taking a look at exactly what happened, trying to figure out why two pilots thought they were both cleared to land. Air Force and Army investigators spent the morning sifting through the burned wreckage of the C-141 and F-16D. They're also examining tapes of the control tower's instructions to the two planes that collided.
It's a see and avoid, and the tower obviously is the one that controls the show, if you will.
Last night, the fighter jet collided with a C-130 Hercules less than 300 feet above the ground. The transport plane landed safely. The two pilots on board the fighter ejected, but their jet crashed in flames, skidding across the runway at 180 miles an hour. Flying metal punctured the fuel tanks of the C-141, destroying it. About 500 paratroopers were nearby, readying for a parachuting exercise.
My first initiative was try to get as far away as I could, and then we felt the heat and knew that there was no way we were going to outrun it, and probably when I hit the ground, I didn't think I was going to end up picking up.
A number of those injured have been flown to Brooke Army Air Force Hospital in San Antonio, Texas. Again, the death count, we are told officially at 16. Some unconfirmed reports have just come to us as the death count would be at 18. This is the worst accident ever at Pope Air Force Base and Fort Bragg back in 1953. 15 Army soldiers were killed when their transport plane went down at Fort Bragg. At Pope Air Force Base, I'm Drew Levinson reporting. Now back to you.
It's the same old story for many living in Hibbing, promises of a new industry, promises of a brighter economic future. But for these Iron Range residents, this story rarely has a happy ending. Northwest Airlines' long-awaited Airbus maintenance base is the latest chapter. The financially troubled airline may fall far short of its initial promise.
I think like in the past with the electronics and all the other things that have fallen through, it's like, you know, another time we've lost out, and it's just a shame that we're forgotten about up here a lot of times.
The Northwest scaleback may mean a number of changes. Not only may Hibbing lose hundreds of promised jobs, but the type of jobs may also change. The original 1,800 expected jobs is reportedly down to about 500. Hibbing may only see about 100 of those jobs, and many will be positions such as reservations, jobs that pay about half of what veteran aircraft mechanics earn. But Hibbing city officials remain optimistic.
Every job that we can create is another person with a paycheck. So in that respect, there's a reality there. But there needs to be also a reality check in that it's not the type of project that was first envisioned.
John Fido helped initiate the Airbus project for the Northland. He blames the scale back on Northwest's financial trouble and political conflicts. And while the airline now says construction may begin by July of next year, Hibbing residents are leery.
I guess, like a lot of people, I think I'll believe it when I see it, and I'm not surprised it's been scaled down like this.
In Hibbing, Stephanie Guadian, News 6.
Financial troubles of Northwest Airlines.
Well, yeah, and I guess the news about the big bonuses didn't sit real well with most people. I know it didn't sit well with.
We do have a lot of low-income families in this area, and the kids have been great. The kids come in, they may look a little ragtag, but they just get excited, and they run right back home, come back down with a can of something. I think that's really neat, you know.
Okay.
I think the adults could learn something from them.
The reality is that it will be a smaller facility because there is a smaller fleet to maintain. Northwest had to cancel $7.5 billion of aircraft orders, including half of its planned Airbus fleet. So that means fewer aircraft, it means a smaller facility, but it means that they will still proceed with a plan.
From the southeastern Minnesota town of Red Wing to the steps of the state capitol in St. Paul, a heated battle is being waged in Minnesota over where to store nuclear waste from the Prairie Island nuclear power plants. The reactor's spent fuel pool is almost full. The utility, Northern States Power, is trying to win government approval to temporarily store excess nuclear waste in sealed steel containers just outside the plant. Critics fear radiation leaks.
The reason it scares me is because no one can give me a date, a certain date, when this will be gone out of our town.
Northern States Power says such fears are unfounded, and that without more space, Prairie Island, which supplies 20% of the region's power, will become the first nuclear power plant in the country forced to shut down because of inadequate waste storage space.
They're using scare tactics. They're telling Minnesotans they're going to freeze in the dark if this doesn't happen, but it's just not true.
No one can present a rational way to produce and make up for that power without extraordinarily high costs and disruption of service.
5 nuclear power plants are already full and are using the so-called dry casks to store nuclear waste. 11 more plants, including Prairie Island, will run out of space in the next 4 years.
The people that want to shut down the nuclear plants are really trying to shut down the economy of this country.
The people of Red Wing don't want the plant shut down. They'd lose 500 jobs and $22 million in tax revenue.
I think it's safe.
They leave tomorrow. We'll still have all that stuff out there. Better to put it and seal it than it is to leave it. We still have it.
But others living nearby aren't so sure.
It's just like the Agent Orange we had in Vietnam. Sooner or later, it's going to get to the people.
If Northern States Power loses, it could begin shutting down Prairie Island next year. David Bloom, NBC News, Red Wing, Minnesota.
To begin to think about these young men in a better time than now. At this point in time now, we're trying to process all of these things. These are grieving processes, and then you add to...
There's troubled times in this earth this day, Lord, and that they are the ones who are our future, and we as adults need to nurture them, Lord, and give them the guidance that they need. We pray that our assembly here, Father, would bring about that, and that those of us who are here, Lord, will step forth and...
The 3 counts of second-degree murder were expected this morning as a somber Todd Warren stepped before District Judge Campbell. Eyewitness accounts in the complaint describe how Warren came into the house on 7th Street with a .44 Magnum and opened fire, killing Keith Hermanson, Peter Moore, and Sam Witherspoon. The complaint says Warren took the .44 from his father's home, and when asked who did the shooting, Warren stated, "I did." Friends say he was pushed by the alleged sexual assault of his girlfriend by someone at the party.
Well, certainly Todd's defense is going to be affected by the legitimacy of the accusations that one or more girls were raped at this party.
A grand jury with first-degree murder charges is expected. Warren is being held tonight on $400,000 bail. Dave Jench, News 6.
About an hour east of the Twin Cities, sandwiched in between Boyceville and Bloomer, is Connorsville, Wisconsin. It's a town with 4 telephone exchanges, 3 fire departments, 2 churches, and 1 tavern for sale.
I've been here 23 years. That should say it all. That's a long time in the bar business.
This bar is up for grabs, and the price is more reasonable than one of the $3.95 hamburger steak specials Deanna Kistner has been serving up since Nixon was president.
We sell a lot of steaks. We sell a lot of chicken. We sell a lot of seafood.
And by New Year's Eve, she intends to sell a lot of bar. and the price is $100.
Hi.
That buys the bar, the 40-seat restaurant, the kitchen, and attached 2-bedroom living quarters.
If they came in here and just sold my bar stools are $50 a piece. They'd get their $100 back in a heartbeat.
So, are they beating down Deanna's door? Not quite. There is another qualification. You have to write a 50-word essay on why you want the bar. Your first draft here may not come in a glass.
We have an independent editor of a newspaper that's going to be doing the judging, and we're not giving out his name. We will afterward, but we're kind of afraid that he's going to be so bombarded with phone calls and might say, well, come on, I'll buy you a beer, or, you know.
That would be the famous Wisconsin beer bribe. Everybody thinks it's a great idea.
Well, that's probably better than just having just like a raffle or whatever.
Makes an interesting way of doing it. I've never heard anything done like it before.
It'd be a cheap bar if you were the winner.
Deanna is hoping 2,500 people will write checks and essays. You see, Deanna's not abandoning Connorsville. She wants to build a catering business right next door. $250,000 would do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I could put up a real nice catering for that. A real nice building.
Well, if I could shoot pool, I wouldn't be a reporter. There is one catch to all of this. If they don't get at least 1,650 entries, then the contest is off, and everybody gets their $100 back, less $10 for expenses.
I think it's a good idea. Take someone with some skill to write, and I don't know what it has to do with the bar, but if someone wanted a bar and could write.
You gonna enter?
Oh, no.
Am I? Like I said, my parents just got rid of a bar. I don't want to be involved in another one.
Even for $100, some people just aren't interested. It's tough to sell a bar, even one with no mortgage. Deanna has sold this one twice. Each time she had to come back when the deal didn't work. Some people who want to try can't. Relatives are not allowed to enter an essay.
You're related here, right?
Yep.
Oh, you can't enter?
No, I can't enter.
Would you if you could?
Oh, yeah.
You'd like to own this one?
Oh, yeah.
Chances are a lot better than the lottery.
I remember when it was built.
Yeah?
When was it built?
Oh, right after the country went wet. About 34, I guess.
Walter Glennie's been coming here all those years.
He doesn't want green beans on there.
To a place where Deanna knows the dietary peculiarities of each of her customers.
Oh, Lisa. I didn't know that was for Lisa. Yeah, Lisa. She can't eat green beans.
I think it means that it's a place that you can go to talk, to have fun, to visit your friends, family. I think we're like family here to everybody.
It's a place that Wayne Kesmarski likes so well, he's brushing up on his essay skills.
Everybody'd like to own a Cheers, I guess. This is Cheers 2.
Does Arlene need some crackers for that soup?
Yep.
Do you want some crackers for that soup?
Right?
You want some crackers for Arlene?
Well, I could take a couple of lunch for you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that.
You don't need no crackers. Thank you.
Alan Costantini, Connorsville, Wisconsin.
Meet FLIR, a forward-looking infrared system that's high-tech talk for a heat-sensing device that, when attached to a helicopter, helps locate missing people or crime suspects. But that's not all it can do.
The main reason we started using it was for search and rescues, people lost in the woods and such. The real benefit of the spin-off is law enforcement, drug interdiction works real well.
The FLIR can help find fields of marijuana in heavily wooded areas or find indoor marijuana growing operations. The giveaway? Heat. Cool objects appear dark, hot objects appear white.
It takes and senses heat differences. So whereas an object is hotter in one area than another, it will show up that heat. And such as a person in the woods, they're much warmer than the area that surrounds them.
FLIR played a key role in last Friday's drug bust in Cromwell. Officials suspected 26-year-old Dave Wayne Smith of growing and selling marijuana. They flew over his house Thursday night, and FLIR confirmed their suspicions. Smith's house was emitting much more heat than others surrounding it. Friday's drug bust turned up evidence of more than 100 potted plants. It's a drug bust which may not have happened as quickly without FLIR. While $130,000 may seem spendy for this heat-seeking device, its search and rescue and drug enforcement capabilities make FLIR worth its weight in gold. And FLIR may just be the beginning of high-tech drug enforcement here in the Northland.
Oh, absolutely, no question. Not only with a unit like this, but there's many other units that are available that we don't even know about yet.
In Carlton County, Stephanie Guadian, News 6.
Well, my temper is getting a little short, but I haven't told anybody to get off the field.
Yeah. IRRB Commissioner Jim Gustafson says the very first thing Northwest Airlines executives should do tomorrow is to thank the people of Minnesota for saving the airline. Secondly, he expects them to honor their commitment to Minnesota by moving forward with facilities in Hibbing and Duluth, but at a reduced local subsidy level.
We could argue we shouldn't do anything more. We've already we already saved the airline.
You saved them once.
That's right. But we're not saying that. We're saying that we will participate in offering some incentives to build the facilities in Duluth and on the Iron Range, but we want to be sure that it's in proportion to what we agreed.
Gustafson wouldn't specify what Duluth and the IRRB are offering Northwest this time around, but there have been enough news leaks to report that Northwest is looking to create 250 jobs at an 800 reservation center in Hibbing, and perhaps 300 jobs in Duluth at an aircraft maintenance facility. It's a far cry from what was originally envisioned, but in today's economic climate, city and government leaders may be inclined to take what they can get.
Child abuse prevention starts with you. It's not with governments, it's not with organizations, it starts with each one of us. And if we can make an effort to help a child and to encourage a child and to make a child's self-esteem enhanced, we're preventing child abuse.
Is that we are indeed humbled by the trust that you have put in us, and we won't let you down.
On May 30th, 1991, Al Checky made the announcement that the media heralded as a done deal. Almost 3 years later, we know differently. John Fido was being congratulated for his tenacity. So, should we believe that the announcement yesterday in St. Paul heralds another done deal?
What is this, the third or fourth announcement?
John Fido is now looking out for Hibbing's concerns. He says Hibbing and Chisholm have already spent more than $150,000 in legal fees trying to secure a Northwest facility. But in the end, Hibbing may benefit even more than Duluth. More jobs for less money, if it's a done deal this time.
I think there's going to be quite a few additional meetings that go on in terms of this whole process before we get to the point of construction.
Fido and others in Hibbing were a little put off by an article in this morning's Duluth News-Tribune that intimated a 1-800 reservation center wouldn't necessarily be built in Hibbing, a story apparently planted in the Twin Cities. The article didn't say it, but Northwest officials had mentioned Buell and even Cotton as possible locations. In the Twin Cities, Senator Doug Johnson and others quickly responded to the newspaper. It will be Hibbing that gets the reservation center.
As usual in this whole process, politics seems to kind of run parallel with the project, so who knows?
Through our company and myself personally, we have felt a tremendous pressure over the past few years in the areas of financial planning, legislation, human resources, and other administrative problems. I've gotten away from what I started Gold Cross Ambulance to do, and that is take care of people. It appears this is not a temporary trend. We must move toward becoming a much larger business.
So you have to look at that. You don't hear much about these diseases, but they certainly can cause severe illness. They're not always the mild illness we think about. And to protect your child against those, it is very important to get these shots.
Come in to get tax help. We will answer any simple questions that they may have. We'll provide forms for them to use in filing their tax returns. We will not be actually preparing the returns, but we'll provide a lot of assistance in helping them get it done.
Mr. Jardine? Mr. Jardine, are you maintaining that you're innocent?
The 25-year-old West Duluth resident had nothing to say this afternoon as sheriff's deputies escorted him out of Superior Court. Jury selection started earlier in the morning. Because of the high profile of this case, the process could take some time.
Mr. Jardine, is the jury selection going the way you thought it would?
Jardine continued his silence as he returned to his jail cell. He is charged with first-degree sexual assault and attempted first-degree homicide. His victim is a 22-year-old Superior woman who worked at Katie's massage parlor. The attack took place on November the 7th last year.
Her testimony was that she did not consent.
That it was forced sex, that it was rape?
That she didn't consent to any of the intercourse, and that it happened after he had handcuffed her and pointed a gun at her.
An employee of Katie's says Jardine took a personal liking to one of the women and started frequenting the business. She says that he was quiet in an odd kind of way and that he thought the girls liked him. She asked him to never come back. He didn't listen.
During their spare time, the women who work here do arts and crafts which they sell at county fairs. This is the room where they store their materials. It's also the room where the attack took place. You can still see some of the blood stains on the floor.
The owner, Kay Richards, told News 6, in the 22 years she's owned the business, she has fired 7 employees for having sex on the premises. Richards maintains her business is not in the business of sex. She says if you want sex, go to Duluth.
Which room? Oh, is that where it happened?
You can see here, look at the bags. They're just garbage bags. They tore open just throwing them off.
Al and Shirley Johnson returned home Friday night to this mess. Someone had traveled down their dead-end road to dispose of deadly asbestos. An official from the Pollution Control Agency was on site this afternoon.
This stuff is dangerous.
Well, yeah, it is. In this state, it's dangerous.
Jeff Connell suspects the material came from an industrial site because of how much is here. He says whoever dumped it faces stiff fines.
I felt really fuzzy. And I go back in the front, waiting for
expressed to you, either verbally or by his conduct, that he felt bad or remorseful about what had happened?
You could tell by his actions, and a few tears.
Whoever did this answer, you're right in the right place here. And I'm going to add another word to it, and that is control, including men, adult men, and teenage boys assault women because they have this need to have control and power over the person they're in a relationship with. A family where there is a history of abuse. Her boyfriend expected her to do certain things. And this
Well, they're going to be distributed to parents or children when there's an emergency in the home as a method of easing the anxiety and helping to calm the children.
She is 26 years of age and resides in St. Louis, Missouri. She is described as being quite dedicated to children and truly believes that being prepared and having high self-esteem can help you make goals, which eventually will help make getting around life's obstacles much easier.
In order to deal with the situation the right way, we must have the self-esteem and we must have the education to be confident to deal with any kind of emergency situation. So, I mean, the whole concept is be safe, have high self-esteem, be an influence for one another, support one another, love one another, be there for one another.
Errol started in Winnipeg and intends to finish in Venice, Louisiana. Mathematically speaking, that's 2,500 miles in 25 days, or an average of 100 miles per day. Errol plans to speak with so many kids that when asked to give a number, she could only say thousands. The travel time combined with the time it takes to go through her seminars proved to make each day quite long.
Usually when I stop, I'll stop at like a gas station or somewhere where I can get somebody to verify my odometer, you know. And then after I get that verified, I'll get in the car, go off my route, go get something to eat, go to a restaurant or do her laundry or whatever we got to do, go work on my seminars.
Robin has already traveled 400 miles, but it's not alone. She has her ventriloquist dummy Jean to help keep her company as she rides down that long and windy road. In West Duluth, John Jetta, News 6.
Ask your parents to give you helmets. They are cool. Helmets are cool.
The heavy guns hitting Garajda and surrounding the other UN-declared safe havens will not be stopped by air power alone. That is one thing the Europeans seem to agree about. Another is nothing the Bosnian Serbs say can be believed. While they promised peace, Radko Mladic, the Serb military commander, led the attack on Garajda. And there is another point of agreement, that the U.S. must end its zigzag policy on Bosnia, talking tough one minute, calling for negotiations the next. To the Serbs, that is a sign of weakness. There is still a small degree of hope the U.S. will contribute ground troops to the UN forces in Bosnia. General Sir Michael Rose wanted 8,000 more men. The UN offered 3,700, but delivered only 1,200. In Parliament, there was obvious frustration.
The House is well aware that there has been no support from any quarter for deploying the large UN or NATO combat army that would be needed for the UN to be sure of imposing its will on the warring factions.
The British feel they have done their share, 3,300 men, 4 killed, the latest in Gorazde. And General Mladic wants more territory, saying this war will be over when the Muslims hand over their weapons to me. Rick Davis, NBC News, London.
Is good for the city. The idea of saying that the only way to save or improve our Bayfront Park by building a shopping center next to it is just bizarre.
Opponents say there's little new out of yesterday's announcement, other than the fact that there's now 2 out-of-state developers ready to carve up the Bayfront Park area. But Friends of Bayfront and others say they're willing to sit down with Mayor Doty's office to form a task force to develop a short and long-range plan for the area. And despite some last-minute rhetoric, they say it's time to begin healing the wounds that opened during the often bitter debate leading up to Tuesday's election.
For months now, there's been an effort to browbeat the citizens into not voting on this or believing it's going to happen anyway. And the people of Duluth are simply not going to be intimidated, they're not going to be misled, and they're not going to be bullied into giving up their right to speak on this issue.
Hogue and others say they want Bayfront improved, but not at the cost of ruining it with a mall, and not by helping Sam Brown pay for it. In Duluth, Derek Hines, News 6.
The casket carrying former President Richard Nixon arrived at the Nixon Library and Birthplace in Yorba Linda, California late this afternoon. Nixon's body will lie in state here until funeral services tomorrow. All living ex-United States presidents, as well as representatives of other world leaders, will attend the state funeral Wednesday. Nixon began his last trip home to California at Stewart Air Force Base in Newburgh, New York, this morning. He flew in the same Boeing 707 Air Force One that he used to come home to California after his resignation in 1974. The last time Nixon arrived at El Toro Marine Base in California aboard an Air Force One was August 9, 1974. He was returning home in disgrace as the only United States president to ever be forced to resign his office. At that time, pundits thought Nixon was politically dead, but he doggedly pursued his place in history by writing 9 books and maintaining contact with world leaders. This morning in New York, daughters Julie Nixon Eisenhower and Tricia Nixon Cox and their husbands accompanied their father home for the last time. For his final journey, Nixon received a 21-gun salute. And hail to the chief. John Gibson, NBC News, Yorba Linda, California.
Some from a radio station. Hello.
I forgot how this goes in here now. There we go. Thank you.
Because I think that
the
resorts and many of the guides in the Northwest Angle were caught in a federal sting. Indictments were handed down last week, including over 60 counts of game and fish violations. But resorters say many of the charges stem from minor violations of vaguely written. Once again this spring, guides on Lake of the Woods are tense, worried customers might be undercover agents.
And the way we've been treated in the paper is like we're
Behind these walls is a world ruled by men, where women say they are routinely harassed, molested, and discriminated against, and forced to take it. This mother of a teenager was one of those victims.
You are on your own. Anything could happen.
Becky, a young mother of 2, also faced harassment and molestation.
Well, there was a lot of that kind of stuff.
What kind of stuff?
Well, men making comments and women walking by and pinching their butts or looking down their shirts.
Many of the staff, at least at the lower level, saw a serious problem.
They're being put in with batterers, they're being put in with sexual offenders, they're being put in with men who are very angry.
A big part of the problem at Port Rehabilitation and Mesabi Work Release may come from the facility's layout. We weren't allowed in, but former employees gave us this floor plan. The green room is the only place that men and women were allowed to smoke and drink pop. Notice it is surrounded by men's bedrooms. The women were isolated there with men cut off from guards by a long hallway and a closed door. The bulk of the reported sexual harassment happened here. The other problem was the stairway up to the women's floor. It too was unlocked, allowing men to easily sneak upstairs.
I slept with one eye open at all times and always looking at the door.
When the female prisoners complained, often they were punished by having their visits to their children canceled or were restricted to their rooms. And if they continued to press their safety concerns?
The next step was that the female would be labeled a troublemaker. And she would be given the option of shut up and put up with it or be sent back to prison.
Some of the staff tried to stop the harassment.
And if we would go to Mr. Claver and Mr. Cummings, it would be, oh, you women. Come on, really, what's the difference?
I was so concerned that I charted in the females' chart and the males' chart what I observed. They felt that I was argumentative and did not want to go along with what they felt I should do. And yes, I was terminated.
And the abuse got more serious, including rape. This Duluth Police Department report indicates a female inmate was raped by a male inmate on August 28, 1993. The reported assault took place inside the woman's room at Port Rehabilitation. No charges were ever brought against the man or the facility.
1 or 2 of the gentlemen from that metro county entered into this young lady's room and raped her. And the administration did nothing.
Former employees question how the assault could have happened with no guards knowing.
Because they were just
The
proud.
police report states the victim started screaming at him to get out of the room, but he continued to try to force her to have sex with him. She began hitting him on the chest and screaming at him to stop. A second man followed the first and also had sex with the woman. The police report says the incident lasted about an hour. But during that time, the guard reports say all clients are in bed and sleeping. The building is very quiet. Police investigators want to know why guards didn't hear the screams and why the victim wasn't given the standard sex crimes test. They also question why the assault was not reported for 15 hours after it happened and why the sex crimes unit was not told for 9 days. And it's not just the inmates who are forced to endure this alleged abuse. Female guards, counselors, and even supervisors report constant harassment at work and at training seminars.
Mr. Cleaver looked over at me and he said, "Are you having fun?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great." And he said, "Well, whenever you're not, let me know. We can go up to the room and watch dirty movies." Then he made a comment about, "I heard if you have 2 tequilas that you'll take your clothes off and dance on the table."
What was your response?
And I just kind of looked at him and I went, really? And that's when he went, barkeep, 2 drinks.
Those we talked with said there is a prevailing sexist attitude in the facility.
There were sexually explicit jokes both in front of male and female staff.
By whom?
I personally heard Mr. Cleaver refer to female clients and female staff as bitches and fat asses.
This alleged harassment has resulted in a pending lawsuit in which a former employee has charged Misabi Work Release with sexual harassment and discrimination. She claims she was fired for complaining about her treatment and the treatment of female prisoners. Management refused to comment on this case or any of the other allegations in our report. In Duluth, Barbara Riles, News 6.
The first day I got it, I was playing with it for hours. I barely saw my family.
It's been said that the only difference between children and adults are the toys they play with. Nick Lewis may agree. But his new toy has a purpose. Lewis recently purchased a computer software program to help him redesign a new home.
You can draw a plan and then push a button, and then all of a sudden you'll see it from above at an angle, and the walls get created and the staircase goes up and stuff. It's sort of fun to watch.
The program he chose is called 3D Home Architect from Bruderbund Software, one of a number of computerized programs recently introduced to take the guesswork out of home improvement.
To do it manually with some little thing you'd have to do with your hands, I think would be maybe impossible, maybe be very hard.
While homeowners are keeping 3D Home Architect in demand, professionals are using it as well. Nate Feinberg, a home contractor, uses the program in sales presentations.
You know, I brought it home and I hooked it up, and, you know, in a matter of minutes I was laying out and doing rooms, and, you know, so that's the beauty part of it.
The program allows you to lay out a floor plan, add furniture, and make changes more quickly than with pencil and paper. By using an on-screen camera, a finished product can be viewed in 3D.
Wherever you want, you can raise the camera, you can elevate the camera, you can do like a bird's eye.
It also helps deal with some of the technical aspects of home design, even placing electrical outlets according to standard building codes.
This will check your whole plan. It says a ceiling or wall light is not, or ceiling fan is not connected to a switch.
But is a 3D program better than what was already out there? Is it worth the $60?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I think it's a marvelous program for professional use or for the home.
For NBC News, I'm Mike Salort.
Part of it is do the testing. We're testing more lakes, we're finding those, but generally we are seeing an increase in contamination of our lakes and streams over time. We know mercury levels are rising in our lakes and streams. It's basically a source of air pollution that gets washed into our lakes and so forth.
But we also ought to be more aggressive in interrupting aberrant behavior. If a child is truly, review all legal and practical measures available to discourage the migration of criminal actions. The actions that should be implemented include the following. or felt not to be safe from predators and dangerous felons. We must make it clear. I think the public will support the reallocation of funds within the current state budget to pay for this type of activity. It is not acceptable behavior for the state to simply say cost is going to be the reason why we're going to tolerate this type of activity.
Taking them to heart and developing programs from there. I believe one of the biggest problems in government today, one of the biggest, they have forgotten that they are our servants. Really start to campaign hard. I want to just share with you that I'm building our foundation, and we've been planning and growing, and now that takes us to today for our announcement. And then we're going to start down one side of the road. But, you know, going back to this code,
Thank you, Mayor. When we went to the legislature, the for Duluth is very significant and very positive. About $30 million.
For the people of Duluth, all I can do is thank them for what they've done. With that, I'll turn it over.
We have a lot of minerals, and I think the efforts that have been made, and with those financial incentives now, we really have a chance for new opportunities in minerals in our region.
In our delegation, they were offering 500 jobs in Hibbing, and Senator John.
I've been involved in that project from day one, and Hibbing is not in my legislative district, but they expended a lot of effort from early on to work and get the legislation passed.